week's senior editor-at-large and Article 3 Project senior counsel Josh Hammer. Josh, this is an enormous scandal. The Democrats working with Epstein, a known sex offender, to get Donald Trump.
Yeah, Rita, everything that you need to know about the story is based on the relevant timeline, which is that Democrats had some mild success in the off-year elections about 2 weeks ago at this point in New York City, New Jersey, and Virginia. And then inexplicably, but on the other hand, I guess entirely predictably, they caved on the shutdown fight. Like, they totally caved. I mean, Chuck Schumer epically capitulated there. It's the irony of all ironies. He was fighting the shutdown fight to try to forestall an AOC primary challenge in his New York Senate race in 3 years. Now the left is all angry at him. So in order to try to get the momentum back in their favor, in order to try to divert attention from the victorious Republicans and to try to bring the spotlight back to how Democrats are allegedly doing something, fill in the blank there, mysteriously these 20,000 emails magically appear. Look, Rita, my humble opinion is that the Epstein story ranks probably somewhere between the 40th and 50th most important story to the American people. I think the fact that Democrats are resorting to this, frankly, reeks of desperation. It's not just hypocrisy and desperation, though. It is, frankly, just astounding that anyone would take them at their word. To be clear, there were horrific, detestable, loathsome, some of the worst crimes that you can even imagine occurred in this horrific case, roughly 2 decades or so, give or take. There, everyone wants justice for the victims. But it's hard to take these same Democrats seriously, Rita, when we know that there was one particular president who was much closer to Jeffrey Epstein than Donald Trump, who, by the way, kicked Jeffrey Epstein out of Mar-a-Lago, as White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt was quick to note this past week. And that Democrat president was very chummy with Jeffrey Epstein. The noted Democrat donor was Bill Clinton. Funny you should ask. I don't see Ro Khanna or any of these other House Democratic leaders, Hakeem Jeffries. None of them are talking about Bill Clinton's various trips on the so-called Lolita Express, Jeffrey Epstein's private plane. Why is that? I think the American people see through this, Rita. They see this as a nakedly political stunt there. Donald Trump, yes, he knew Jeffrey Epstein. Guess what? So did a lot of people. A lot of very powerful, very prominent people knew
This is a desperate attempt to frame President Trump to having any relation with Epstein. And in actuality, it does show deep ties that Jeffrey Epstein had to
Test, test, test. Test, test. Test, test. Hello? Test, test. Test, test. You gotta be kidding me. All right, everybody can hear now? All right, fantastic. All right, sorry about that. That was crazy. EV Mux is having an issue, but here we are. We're back online, which is fantastic. Just let me know if anything happens in the chat. All right, so to get back to what I was saying, you saw that clip. Was everybody able to hear the clip from Josh Hammer? All right. Resnap, were you able to hear the clip from Josh Hammer? The very beginning, do I need to replay it? Let me know. All right. In fact, let's just make it easy. I'm going to replay the clip from Josh Hammer because we're going to restart this whole thing. So here we go. Here's the clip.
Knew Jeffrey Epstein, the fact that he was corresponding with him.
Counsel Josh Hammer. Josh, this is an enormous scandal. The Democrats working with Epstein, a known sex offender, to get Donald Trump.
Yeah, Rita, everything that you need to know about the story is based on the relevant timeline, which is that Democrats had some mild success in the off-year elections about 2 weeks ago at this point in New York City, New Jersey, and Virginia. And then inexplicably, but on the other hand, I guess entirely predictably, they caved on the shutdown fight. Like, they totally caved. I mean, Chuck Schumer epically capitulated there. It's the irony of all ironies. He was fighting this shutdown fight to try to forestall an AOC primary challenge in his New York Senate race in 3 years. Now the left is all angry at him. So in order to try to get the momentum back in their favor, in order to try to divert attention from the victorious Republicans and to try to bring the spotlight back to how Democrats are allegedly doing something, fill in the blank there, mysteriously these 20,000 emails magically appear. Look, Rita, my humble opinion is that the Epstein story ranks probably somewhere between the 40th and 50th most important story to the American people. I think the fact that Democrats are resorting to this, frankly, reeks of desperation. It's not just hypocrisy and desperation, though. It is, frankly, just astounding that anyone would take them at their word. To be clear, there were horrific, detestable, loathsome, some of the worst crimes that you can even imagine occurred in this horrific case, roughly 2 decades or so, give or take there. Everyone wants justice for the victims. But it's hard to take these same Democrats seriously, Rita, when we know that there was one particular president who was much closer to Jeffrey Epstein than Donald Trump, who, by the way, kicked Jeffrey Epstein out of Mar-a-Lago, as White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt was quick to note this past week. And that Democrat president who was very chummy with Jeffrey Epstein, the noted Democrat donor, was Bill Clinton. Funny you should ask. I don't see Ro Khanna or any of these other House Democratic leaders, Hakeem Jeffries. None of them are talking about Bill Clinton's various trips on the so-called Lolita Express, Jeffrey Epstein's private plane. Why is that? I think the American people see through this, Rita. They see this as a nakedly political stunt there.
Hey, welcome in. Thanks so much for joining me here at Courageous Media. Sorry about the technical difficulties. Don't know what was going on with EV Mux, but we are here. Fantastic. Really appreciate everybody rolling up. Resnap in the house. Lynn Sanger was first in the house. We got a bunch of people in the chat. Really appreciate everybody being here. Now, my question for the audience did Trump just manage to play the Democrats in a game of 4D chess and get them to basically clamor and demand what they never really should have wanted released in the first place? It is absolutely amazing. And Josh Hammer, whether you love him or hate him, he's absolutely right. The Democrats have been clamoring, talking about Epstein, but they don't want to talk about the two, and I'm going to say two presidents because we're going to get into this, the two presidents who have been deeply involved with Epstein, and neither one of them is named Donald J. Trump. Josh Hammer talked about Clinton. Clinton has been clearly implicated in multiple flights on the Lolita Express to the island, to all sorts of shenanigans. Virginia Giuffre fingered him along with Prince Andrew in terms of one of her abusers. So you've got serious problems with Clinton. Well, the other president that the media has been meticulous to keep out of this scandal is also deeply involved with Epstein, him and his aides, not just in rides on the Lolita Express, but his administration actually colluding with Epstein to try to frame Trump. This is going to get really interesting because realize what the Dems did last week. They took a swath of 60,000 emails that were released by the Epstein estate. They cherry-picked 3 of them that mentioned the name Trump. They redacted the victim's name so that they thought you were too stupid to figure out who it is. And then they tried to frame up Trump with these things. But when you actually read the emails, they do none of the thing. They do no such thing. They actually exonerate Trump. They show that Trump was never implicated by the actual victims. And then they're hoping that you don't realize the victim is Virginia Giuffre, who is not only on record, not only in her writings, but under oath said Trump never did anything wrong. Trump was never implicated. She never saw Trump, never heard Trump. Trump never did anything to her. So you've got serious issues. But the other 59,997 emails paint a much different picture. They start showing you that the Obama administration was deeply involved with Epstein trying to frame Trump. This is where it gets really, really interesting. Now, check this out. So here's Stacey Plaskett. Now, for those of you who don't know who Stacey Plaskett is a congresswoman at large from the Virgin Islands, which basically means she's like an honorary congressperson, right? I think she still gets paid, but she doesn't have any vote. She can't vote on anything. However, she was part of the DOJ. She was nominated by George W. Deep State Bush. And as part of that, she had extensive email communiques with Jeffrey Epstein trying to frame up Donald Trump. Now, check this out, because here's a great story from Real America's Voice that talks about a lot of the shenanigans, a lot of the things that were going on that they tried to push Trump's way, but just aren't working. And I believe, this is my theory, yes, Trump wants the Epstein story to go away. Why? Because he believes it's interfering with all of the great wins that Trump has been delivering for the American people. People are not talking about the 7 wars that he's ended. They're not talking about Middle East peace. They're not talking about the fact that if Ukraine keeps doing what they're doing, that we're on the verge of potentially getting Putin to the peace tables in Ukraine. They're not talking about the fact that he got our NATO allies to pony up 5% of their GDP for defense spending. They're not talking about the fact that gas is down almost $1 from where it was under Biden. They're not talking about that eggs are down 30-40% under what they were under Biden, that mortgages are down nearly a point. Trump is lowering prices. The media is trying to stitch up Trump that no, prices are up. And in order to basically cloud that story so that no one's really looking, they keep throwing out the Epstein chump. But now I think Donald Trump may have been actually playing 4D chess in this whole thing all along. Maybe not, because now he has gotten the Democrats to clamor and cry and scream and moan to get the Epstein files released. And we're going to see that Trump basically just capitulated and said, fine, give them what they want. But first, let's check out just how deep some of this conspiracy nonsense goes. Here we go.
This is a desperate attempt to frame President Trump to having any relation with Epstein. And in actuality, it does show deep ties that Jeffrey Epstein had to liberals and to other countries in terms of business dealings and influence. So out of all these discoveries, and we talked a little bit about this yesterday, out of 60,000 plus pages, those 3 emails they plucked out of there in any way did not show any guilt towards President Trump at all. Matter of fact, it did show that Wolf there had been working with Epstein in terms of how to frame Trump. It was almost a very deceiving line of communications there. So President Trump is absolutely 100% vindicated by all of this. And I think as we see more emails and more information come out, we're going to learn just how corrupt Jeffrey Epstein was on the political side with foreign governments trying to compromise people. So if anything, I think these emails actually help Trump's basically narrative that he is absolutely not guilty of any mischievous actions towards anyone involved. Matter of fact, if you remember, he threw Jeffrey Epstein out of his club at Mar-a-Lago once he found out that he was, a kind of a shady character. So if these things will vindicate President Trump, I am 100% sure. But if anything, on the flip side of all of this, I think this sends a message to people that are a victim of rape or any type of sexual abuse that the government and our elected officials will not let those predators hide from being brought into the forefront and prosecuted. So I think this is a good message.
So again, we've got essentially the Dems, parts of the Obama administration, trying to frame up President Trump, trying to paint this as this is Trump's issue, which is really strange because they should have known that they were knee deep in this thing. Now, as part of this 60,000 email dump, we get emails like this, where we can see that, we've got the New York Times, we've got New York Times reporters essentially trying to frame up Trump. You see, I know how dirty Donald is. This is Jeffrey to Kathleen Rumler. My guess is that non-lawyers in New York business have no idea what it means to have your fixer flip. I think he makes, Trump makes Trump money, making it not illegal. So here you've got them trying to stitch up Trump. Here you've got Landon Thomas. He's digging around again. Not clear if this is another book or expanded paperback version. So this is Landon to Jeffrey Epstein, talking about why he had hired Ken Starr. So going back to all of their deep state assets, there's the same. Here's Michael Wolff. Again, heads up. I think you should let him hang himself. This goes back. This is one of the emails that they actually released, where they're colluding with how to try to get Trump to create political hay for the Democrats. Hey, if we can get him to say he was never on the plane, hey, he was on the plane. Yeah, but he never went to the island. and he never participated in anything. That's from the victims themselves. And he kicked Epstein out of Mar-a-Lago. And he was the whistleblower that rolled over in Florida to the feds and gave the feds all the information they needed for the first prosecution. And so really what you've got now is you've got Trump saying, okay, you know what? I'm going to get them to clamor and scream and cry. And now let's just give, quote unquote, give them what they wanted. But now they have no excuses when the information that gets released is damaging to them. They can't say, oh, this is Trump going after his political enemies. No, they can't, because they have screamed for months now to release the Epstein files. Check this out.
Conversation. President Trump reversed his stance on the Epstein files. He's now urging House Republicans to support the release of the records in a vote planned for tomorrow. Last night, before publicly reversing his stance on that vote, President Trump claimed Democrats were using the issue to deflect.
They're using Jeffrey Epstein as a deflection from the tremendous success that we're having as a party.
CBS News senior White House correspondent Weijia Zhang joins us now with the latest on all of this. Weijia, good morning to you. Many of our viewers will be waking up. Maybe they'll be surprised to see the president changing his position on the Epstein files now. But you also wonder, since Republicans will have this vote anyway, would it have made a difference? What's your analysis? Why is the president changing his tune?
Oh, good morning, Arrow, and good morning to everybody. Well, President Trump has made very clear that he's simply over it. He doesn't want to talk about Jeffrey Epstein anymore, and he...
Of course he doesn't want to talk about Epstein because it's distracting from the success. But at the same time, realize that if Trump had walked into office and released a bunch of damning information on liberals, the first thing the media would have done is, this is Trump going after his political enemies. This is Trump vengeance. This is Trump revenge. I could be wrong. We'll see. We'll see how this all plays out. But Trump essentially getting the Dems to demand the release of the Epstein files. If he releases them and it's all damaging evidence to liberals and deep state hacks, the Dems can't then say, wait a minute, it's just Trump vengeance. No, because Trump will simply say, I gave you what you wanted. You wanted the release of the Epstein files. Here you go. And what I think we may start finding is just how deeply involved Barack Hussein Obama, Barry Soetoro, was with Epstein. And I'm going to play this clip because I think this is the actual issue that's going on, not just with Epstein, but with everything. If we go back to the problems, the severe problems that our country is facing right now, in terms of the polarization of politics, in terms of the polarization of white versus black, gay versus straight, anti-Semitism, the whole nine yards, we can point back to one singular individual and one singular administration where all of that started and accelerated. And I believe that Barry Soetoro was 100% an intelligence plant. He was the ultimate Manchurian candidate. Check this out and let me know what you think in the comments, because I think this is all related to Epstein.
2008, something unbelievable happened for us in the FBI. We were getting lots of rumors about this high-level asset that worked for several intelligence agencies at the same time. He worked for the Saudi intelligence service. He worked for the CIA, and he was being developed as a political asset in Chicago, Illinois. He was not even a United States citizen, but it was said that he was a student visa and that he was a national from another country. In 2008, everyone in the intelligence structure found out who he was. It was this individual whose name I don't like to say, who became president in 2008 of the United States.
And I will faithfully execute
the office of President of the United States.
The office of President of the United States.
One of his code names was Renegade. His real name was Barry Soetoro, but he adopted a different name for his political career. When they ran him for president, the cabal, basically, this was the culmination of so many of their plans for so many years. His mission was to destroy the United States from within, one institution at a time. One of the things he did, of course, was he He defunded our military. He brought down the resources that they got. But then he ordered our military in many, many instances and in various theaters to attack our allies and to defend and supply and help our enemies. That's exactly how he created ISIS. He would say publicly that the military were going to bomb our enemies, but then he would have the military actually bomb enemies of ISIS, our allies. He gave ISIS funding and equipment by basically ordering our military to take equipment into a certain theater and then abandon it. And the commanders would say, that's ridiculous. We'd just be handing that stuff over to ISIS. And the president's office would say, don't question orders, just follow your orders. And that.
So I thought that was a very interesting clip. And I think it's absolutely what happened. I have no doubt that Barry Soetoro, AKA Barack Hussein Obama, was 100% an intelligence cabal deep state plan. I believe he was a CIA asset. I believe his loyalties lied elsewhere than the United States of America and the Constitution. Remember that the whole birther idea that he was a foreign-born individual came from Hillary Clinton, not any of the Republicans. That was a Hillary Clinton issue. And Hillary Clinton, they knew exactly what they were dealing with in terms of the fact that he was not a natural-born U.S. citizen, which means he was disqualified from being president. But all of the stuff we are dealing with started in the Obama administration. And I believe that's where you also got the acceleration of Epstein. And I think this all wraps around to the deep state. Let me know what you think. Andrew, Trump thinks MTG is more of a traitor than Mayorkas, huh? No, I don't think he does. And we're going to get into that story next because that is a perfect lead-in because our next story is the Trump MTG dust-up. Let me know what you think of Barack Hussein Obama, Barry Soetoro. What do you think? Was he an intelligence plant? Was he a foreign agent plant? I would love to know what you think. But let's dive into the next story, which is the Marjorie Taylor Greene Trump fight. And what I think is really the reason behind this. And I think it could actually be Trump executing leadership and care for Marjorie Taylor Greene. But let me know what you think when this is all said and done. Please smash that like button, subscribe, turn on the notifications. And if you like the content, please share Courageous Media with everybody that you know. All right, let's check out Marjorie Taylor Greene. Here we go.
Is there anything, though, you'd critique or do differently?
My critique is not being focused on America first, but I largely blame that on our Congress because I serve in the House. I also blame that on who's advising him in the White House. You know, keeping him on nonstop tours around the world and nonstop meetings with foreign countries' leaders is not America first. It's just not. I think domestic policy should be the most important issue that the president and the Republican-controlled House and Senate are working on, and that showed up in the election on Tuesday.
But as the president, does he get some responsibility for that?
Well, of course. I mean, every president is responsible for the way that they lead, but they're also in a silo of information. And I think that's why after the election on Tuesday, you saw President Trump come out and react differently, probably because they couldn't keep him siloed. And here's the polls, sir, and this is what people are saying. I think he saw for himself and
guys. So the New York Post has put out a headline that is absolutely not true at all. They're claiming that MTG breaks with Trump, and that's not true. And on The View, and I'm about to post up the video, I literally said I love Donald Trump. I campaigned for him for years, which is 100% true. But here's the story. The New York Post is owned by the Murdochs, and that's also Fox News. That whole organization has never met a foreign war they didn't love, and that's why they don't like me. And so they're smearing me with their article right now. We've sent them an email, and I'm in the process of putting up posts to refute and prove that they're liars. And I'll tell you one thing you'll notice about Fox News. You'll see John Fetterman on there all the time, but you never see Marjorie Taylor Greene. They fired Tucker Carlson. True America First patriots and Republicans are never on Fox News, and the New York Post never praises them.
So there you got Marjorie Taylor Greene basically saying that you've got an issue with the media creating this fake Trump Marjorie Taylor Greene war story. It's complete and utter nonsense. That's what I think. I think that this whole thing is a media conflagration. I think they're doing the same thing that they've done with Tucker and Candace versus other MAGA Trump supporters, where they're trying to drive a wedge there. I believe the media is trying to drive a wedge in between other America First supporters and Trump. They tried to do it with Elon and Trump. Again, whenever you hear Marjorie Taylor Greene speak in an interview, she's never in your face attacking Trump. I think she's got a couple issues going on here. One, she owns a construction company. So she has been somewhat critical of Trump's deport all illegal aliens because that personally impacts her construction company. The same thing with the tariffs. I think those are two personal issues that she's let worm their way a little bit into her thoughts and her policy positions on deport everybody and the tariffs. Now, can she have those views? Sure. But is that attacking the president? Is that she's anti-Trump? No, I believe that is a media, fabricated nonsense story. Now, what else is going on? Now, Trump did say, when Trump was asked, he calls her Marjorie Taylor Greene. He's done that once or twice. But again, realize that that's what Trump does. When Trump feels attacked, he lashes out. That's the Queens in him. That's the New York in him. That's the way he was brought up, not brought up by his parents. That's the way he grew up in New York, in Queens, right? When you think about Queens kids, when you listen to other people from Queens, right? They weren't as tough as the kids from the Bronx, and they weren't as rich as the kids from Manhattan. So they were always like the third stepchild. And they were always attacked by everybody else. So Trump grew up in that world. That's just what formed his identity at a young age. But when you listen, I want you to check out this clip from Scott Jennings, because I think this might actually be what's going on. And so when I think Trump might have done this out of an air of leadership and trying to help MTG and maybe help himself as well and his agenda. And now it's been blown out of proportion by the media. And then Trump comes back and attacks because he's told, Marjorie Taylor Greene's attacking you. Well, he's told by who? But check this out from Scott Jennings. Would love to know what you think about this. Here we go.
Technically true, based on what I've heard and what I know, that he didn't tell her not to run, but what she didn't say was that he sent her a poll privately.
And to give you a little bit of context, the other thing that sparked this quote unquote fight between Marjorie Taylor Greene and Donald Trump was that Donald Trump basically said, I'm not going to endorse you for Senate against Ossoff. And so the media took that and ran and said, Trump's attacking Marjorie Taylor Greene. Trump hates Marjorie Taylor Greene. Marjorie Taylor Greene hates Trump. No. So you've got the personal issues with their construction company, but you've also got this issue with he didn't want to endorse her for Senate. Let me back this up a little bit. Here we go.
But I know that he didn't tell her not to run, but what she didn't say was that he sent her a poll privately, discreetly, and it had information in it. and it showed her down 20 points to John Ossoff. And so in politics, when you want to send a message to someone that you like or that has been an ally, you don't embarrass them publicly. You privately send them information and show them what the reality is. And so I think it's true that he didn't tell her not to run, but it's also true that he did her a big favor, which is to show her information that a candidacy statewide in Georgia for her would have been a disaster.
Congresswoman, thank you for being.
So, very interesting information from Scott Jennings that according to their internal, highly accurate polling, MTG was trailing Ossoff by 20 points, that it wasn't even close. And so did Trump try to basically save her from an embarrassing run? Maybe. There's also the point of you want to put in a candidate that's much closer in the polls. And for whatever, I mean, there's lots of reasons, but the media has targeted MTG and made her a very polarizing figure. Now, she's also done some of this to herself, right? Let's check this out, because here she is again. People say, oh, she bent the knee. But again, she's never really openly attacked Trump. That's why I think this is a media, a lot of this is a media fabrication. Check this out.
I have something in my heart that I think is incredibly important for our country, and that is to end the toxic fighting in politics. And this has been going on for years, and it has divided our country, split up friends and families, neighbors, and it's not solving our problems. The most hurtful thing he said, which is absolutely untrue, is he called me a traitor, and that is so extremely wrong. And those are the types of words used that can radicalize people against me and put my life in danger.
What do you think happened? What do you think is the reason for this?
Unfortunately, it has all come down to the Epstein files, and that is shocking. And, I stand with these women. I stand with rape victims. I stand with children.
So just to debunk this, right? Realize that, and I don't know how, they may have deceptively edited this. No one trusts CNN. But realize that, she talks about the Epstein files. But then in that same interview, I want to play this other clip because I want to back this up right away before we, spend 3 minutes on that. Check out this clip from the same interview.
I have no idea what's in the files. I can't even guess, but that is the questions everyone is asking, is why fight this so hard?
Well, before this blow up, you sort of alluded to this just now. You said you were confident the president wouldn't be implicated. Are you still confident of that?
I'm listening to the women. Those are the ones that are saying that he did nothing wrong. Virginia Giuffre even said under oath that Donald Trump did nothing wrong, and she wrote it in her book. So I'm continuing to listen to the women, and I think their voices should be the loudest. I have no.
Now, the one thing, so you've got basically Marjorie Taylor Greene she's not going to straight out attack the president. Now, she obviously is hurt by the whole Marjorie Taylor Greene, but realize that's what Trump did. Remember when he called lying Ted Cruz, right? Well, him and Ted Cruz, they're just fine now. Did he actually, was he trying to portray Ted Cruz as a man of no character? He's a liar. He's dishonest. He picks a moniker and goes after crooked Hillary Clinton. Now, that was actually true. She's 100% crooked. So Marjorie Taylor Greene is something that fits. And when Trump feels attacked, he's going to attack back. That you've got to realize his nature. But the one thing that I do have against Marjorie Taylor Greene is the apparent, and this might be wrong, it might not be completely full-throated, but it's this apparent flip-flop, and I'm going to play only part of this clip, on her as she talks about Sharia law now and then. Check this out and let me know what you think in the comments about Marjorie Taylor Greene's stance on Sharia law.
There is an Islamic invasion into our government offices right now.
Ilhan Omar doesn't deserve committees. She absolutely does not deserve committees.
A woman out of Minnesota, now she's going into Congress and she's got to wear a head covering.
So that she can represent radical Islam in the United States Congress. And that we need to hold accountable. That right there, we've had enough of it. President Joe Biden is being pushed around by the jihad squad. So members of Congress are supporting terrorists
terrorists that are bombing Israel. You know, they want to put their hand on the Quran and be sworn in? No.
You know, we're going to explain about how you can't swear in on the Quran, and we're going to have the Bible and ask them if they would swear in on the Bible.
And yes, it is an invasion. That's what happened. Obama opened up our borders to an invasion by Muslims. They did the same stupid thing in Europe.
In Europe.
Now, she's absolutely right there. And to go back to our previous story, remember, we didn't have any issues with big Muslim populations in America until Barack Hussein Obama essentially opened up the United States to Muslim refugees. That's where we got the Ilhan Omars of the world, the Rashida Tlaibs of the world, the Zohran Mandamis of the world. She's absolutely right there. Now I'm going to fast forward a little bit because she is full-throated in her attack of Islam in America and the fact that it is incompatible with the Constitution, Sharia law specifically. Let's keep going there.
There are no-go zones with high crime statistics. As a matter of fact, rape is a modern occurrence that happens all the time in these no-go zones. They're claiming it's Islamophobic because Muslim men rape them, and that becomes part of the conversation.
I'm an American woman, and I have all the freedoms in the world to never have to bow to a religion that would force me to cover my body up and only see my eyes and my fingertips. And that is a major threat for all American women. And I think that's something that hits hard for all women. Anyone that is a Muslim that believes in Sharia law does not belong in our government.
Well, the bottom line is
Now, that I believe is absolutely true because Sharia law is incompatible with the Constitution. Now, that was then. She was full-throated in her attacks on, in her criticism and attacks of of Muslims in American government. Now, check this out because it's not quite that anymore. I want you to see this.
To speak with Marjorie Taylor Greene tonight, and I asked her one of the things I was worried about, which is all this Sharia law Muslim concern I see on X.
Oh no, my constituents talk about the same problems that plague you and everyone on this call. I've never been to a town hall. I've never been asked about Sharia law at a town hall. I just haven't. I will tell you, I do think there's a paid social media influencer campaign going on X. If you want Islam and Sharia law, you stay over there in the Middle East. You stay there and go to Mecca and do all your thing. And you know what? You can have a whole bunch of wives or goats or sheep or whatever you want. You stay over there. But in America, see, we made it this great, great country. We don't want it messed up. But I think it's a lot mostly on X, and I think it is paid, and it's probably coming from Israel or AIPAC donors.
So suddenly, Marjorie Taylor Greene is on the anti-Israel bandwagon, specifically when she was full-throated in her criticism of Islam and Muslims in American government because of their adherence to Sharia law. But now all of a sudden, it's a paid ex-influencer campaign? So the bigger question to me is not, I mean, will Marjorie Taylor Greene and Trump mend the fences? Absolutely. All the America First people eventually mend the fences, and especially with Trump. As soon as Trump feels not attacked anymore, he'll be fine. I mean, he's probably not going to endorse her for Senate, especially if she's down 20 points. They'll find a better candidate, one that's not so polarizing, but also one that hasn't flip-flopped on this whole issue. And so are there, is it just the left-wing media? No, there might actually be, elements of the of the pro-Israel, the pro-Zionist crowd that are also attacking MTG and trying to drive a wedge between her and Trump, just like they've done between Tucker and Candace and others in Trump. That's what I think is highly interesting. We have to be very careful that there is a whole paid influencer campaign on the left that is trying to drive wedges in MAGA. And we have to be careful of that. Let me know what you think in the comments. Now, got one more story, and that is the BBC is in ultimate FAFO zone right now. This is absolutely hilarious. We covered this story last week. The BBC completely not misedited, they deceptively and fraudulently edited two Trump speeches, spliced them together, and created something that Trump never said. And it was utterly reprehensible. It was utter disinformation. It was a complete and total fabricated lie. Well, they came out and apologized last week, and we didn't hear much from Trump other than he wasn't real impressed. But let's dive in, because this BBC story has just gotten bigger. We've got people in England now attacking the BBC, and we've got them openly rooting for Trump. This is great stuff. Check this out. As we do this, please smash that like button for me, subscribe, turn on the notifications. Please share Courageous Media with everybody that you go. We're going to dive in with Sky News first as they cover this story. Here we go.
Is gearing up for a massive legal battle with the BBC, seeking billions in damages after the broadcaster admitted to mishandling. It's an understatement. A clip of one of his speeches, something that has already claimed the job of two senior executives. Here is Donald Trump talking about the ordeal.
I'm not looking to get into lawsuits, but I think I have an obligation to do it. This was so egregious. If you don't do it, you don't stop it from happening again with other people. I think you probably have an obligation.
Joining me now from the UK is Talk TV host Mark Dolan.
Back up with Mark Dolan here, and we're going to stop it there. We're going to pick back up with Mark Dolan in a minute, but I thought that was extremely interesting from Trump. I may have an obligation to do this because, we got to basically smack these people down. We can't have this going on. We can't have people splicing together clips and creating something that somebody never said. I mean, it's as bad as this whole idea of an AI deepfake. They just did it with, deceptive editing. And, it's one thing if you edit for time and you just kind of crunch some stuff together. No, but when you edit somebody's words to make them say something they never actually said, in fact, to make them say something that is 180-degree, the polar opposite of what they actually said, that is fraud. That is lying. That is deception. And so Trump is having none of this. Their little, half-witted apology, he's not buying it. Check this out. From Trump himself.
So the BBC has apologised and retracted the report, but they say they won't pay any compensation.
Well, we'll sue them. We'll sue them for anywhere between $1 billion and $5 billion, probably sometime next week.
So you're ready to take?
Well, I think I have to do it. I mean, they've even admitted that they cheated. Not that they couldn't have not done that. They cheated. They changed the words coming out of my mouth. That's worse than what CBS did with Kamala. They changed her answer, but at least they didn't show it, coming out of her mouth.
So the BBC has apologized.
So we got Trump saying we're going to sue him next week for between $1 billion and $5 billion. This is absolutely awesome. Go after the BBC for $5 billion. This is great stuff. Now let's dive back in to Sky News and their interview with former BBC executive. Check this out.
Mark, thanks for coming on the program. The BBC have hardly been repentant for misrepresenting Trump. It was a bit more than a mistake. Can you understand Trump's desire to sue?
Most definitely. I mean, what's great about this story, James, is that the leftist groupthink that dominates the BBC has been outed, and it's being exposed by the most famous man in the world, the most powerful man in the world, Donald Trump. And in Britain, we are celebrating the fact that at last we have an accountability for an organization that we are obliged to pay a compulsory tax for just to own a TV. And you don't mess with Trump. You do so at your peril. He's very angry about this. It's become a diplomatic incident. And I think he's going to be successful in changing the culture of the BBC because it's just exposed public anger about this organization that for years has been gaslighting the public, whether it's COVID measures, whether it's net zero. It's examples of bias are now legion, and at last we're having this conversation.
Well, he says that one of the reasons he wants to sue, and he's talking about up to $5 billion in damages, is he hardly needs the money, but he says he wants to stop this sort of thing being repeated. And I don't know, maybe it will work, because have a listen to this little clip from CNN recently.
And we do want to be clear, the president, Trump, did not receive or send any of the messages, which largely predated his time as president. He's not been accused of any criminal wrongdoing in connection with Epstein or Maxwell.
Mark, have you heard CNN be so careful? They seem petrified of any potential lawsuits coming their way. So maybe you're right. Maybe Trump could change some of the media culture.
Yes, and it's not about becoming pro-Trump, James. You know, Donald Trump is a flawed human being. He's a flawed politician. He's far from perfect. And in fact, with that doctored...
It is about changing the media landscape and about changing the media narrative and the media atmosphere, which Trump has already done. Realize that when Trump rolled out fake news 8 years ago, the change in media direction started right then and there. We now have the fact that only 20% of Americans even watch or trust mainstream propaganda media. That is down from like 80% just 20 years ago. So Trump has already changed the media landscape, but he's changing it again because he is now forcing the propaganda media companies to at least be somewhat even-handed, or at least be circumspect in how they say things. He won his lawsuit against ABC. He won his lawsuit against CBS. He will most likely win this lawsuit against the BBC. They will probably settle. They probably won't go to court. It probably won't be $5 billion, but whatever it is, it shows the American and the British public just how egregious the BBC is. And that gentleman is 100% right. The BBC has been wrong on everything. They've been intentionally wrong on COVID, on climate change, on all of this ridiculous nonsense. And now they've been caught actually fabricating news. This is great stuff. I hope Trump wins. I hope he wins big. I hope he forces them into a huge settlement and actual apologies and actual change in policy. But check this out, because you've got actual British citizens who are rooting for Trump against the BBC. Now, it might be because, realize this, I don't know if any of you knew this, but in Britain, when you buy a television, you have to pay a license fee to the BBC. Whether you watch the BBC or not, whether you want to receive the BBC or not, when you buy a TV, you have to pay them, I believe the amount is upwards of $100 to $200 a month. It's basically an entire cable bill just for the BBC that most British don't even want to watch because it's utter and complete trash. Now check this out, because they're actively rooting for Trump. This is great stuff.
Well, there are lots of people in Britain who are cheering President Trump on and who want him to sue the BBC because they're a huge problem. They've lied, they've cheated, they've fiddled with footage, both in the case of President Trump, but also covering up what's happening in Britain, whether it's mass migration, whether it's our economic problems. They are always biased towards the left, and the British taxpayer has had to pay for all of this fake news. So there is a lot of excitement amongst conservatives in Britain at the moment that President Trump is actually taking the BBC on.
Exactly. The BBC has gaslit the British public on all of the SA gangs. You know, the problem with the grooming gangs throughout England. They've gaslit them on, all sorts of liberal policies. They're the ones who basically they refused to cover. They essentially deplatformed Nigel Farage so badly that Nigel Farage was forced to go essentially start his own network, which he did, GB News. GB News is the brainchild of Nigel Farage. It's an independent news network that only exists because the BBC was so egregiously biased against him and against conservatives in Britain. It's absolutely amazing. And the British citizens are now rooting for Trump against their own dim-witted network. This is awesome.
Do you think an apology from the BBC is enough?
No, I don't, because they keep doing it again and again. They have painted a completely false picture of President Trump in Britain. over a number of years. They've done the same thing about conservatives in our country. And I believe the organization needs to be defunded. And as well as suing the BBC, I think it'd be fantastic if President Trump were to encourage stopping the British taxpayer funding. What is fake news that is damaging Britain's reputation? I mean, the BBC used to be the paragon of journalism across the world. It was respected. It's now become a laughing stock, and it needs to be put out of its misery.
Exactly. It's become a laughing stock, just like CNN, BS Now, when they finally officially changed their name, but PMSNBC, ABC, CBS, NBC, they're all the same. They are all globalist propaganda news sources. It's not actual news, it's globalist propaganda. And they are beholden to the cabal, the same cabal that put Barry Soetoro in office as the president of the United States, aka Barack Hussein Obama. So this is the real issue. The real issue is it's not, America is not about black versus white or any of that nonsense anymore. It is about the working class versus the elitist establishment. It is about America first citizens versus the globalist buffoons, versus the cabal that wants to destroy America and all of Western civilization. They are succeeding in Europe. They are essentially mass importing all sorts of Muslims and others into Europe and destroying that culture as we watch. But right now, we have got a bulwark in Trump. Trump is deporting all these people. He has ended illegal immigration. Now, the next thing that needs to happen, and I'm fully on board with Charlie Kirk on this one, we need to end all legal migration until the migrants we have here legally have assimilated. We need to end the HB1 visa program. And it needs to be basically the only type of that program is only when American talent is not available. Right now, it's being used to essentially drive prices down, to drive wages down, and to give jobs that should go to Americans to foreigners. And it's wrong. And we need to get back to where housing is affordable for younger Americans. We covered that story last week. Check out that video. It's fantastic. Charlie Kirk's last words, essentially, on X. But I really appreciate everybody rolling up. And the CBC in Canada, 100%. They're probably even worse than the BBC, or if not, at least the same. Hey, but I really appreciate everybody rolling up. Victoria Rose, Lynn Sanger, Resnap, thanks so much for being in the house. Mary, Morvan, thanks so much. Really appreciate y'all being here. You guys are awesome. Remember, please smash that like button, subscribe, turn on the notifications, share Courageous Media with everybody that you know. It really helps us out in the YouTube algorithm. If you watch the video all the way through, all of them that we post, comment for the algorithm, smash that like button, and share it. Thanks. It really helps out. Thank you so much. Remember that God is good and he is sovereign. He is in control of this whole thing. I want to see every last Epstein file come out. Let's let the chips fall where they may. And whoever's implicated, let them be held accountable. Thanks so much for being here. Remember, God is good and he is sovereign. Until I catch you next time, have a great day.